Welcome to UniqueWiki.
What if you could find a way to grow a small pile of coins in your pocket every morning, even when the world around you was crashing? What if someone whispered a secret that turned the humblest savings account into a steady river of money? And what if that secret was hidden in a name? The Recession Trigger Index, an AI model that could see the storm before the sky turned gray. Alex lived in a cramped apartment in River City. He was 29, worked 2 jobs, and still struggled to pay the rent. His wallet was always a few dollars short, and the future felt like a blurry screen. He had no family wealth to fall back on, no fancy degrees, only a stubborn hope that one day the bins would stop piling up. Every night he stared at the bank app, watching the numbers flicker like distant stars. There has to be another way, he told himself. But the idea seemed as far away as the moon. One rainy evening, Alex was scrolling through a forum about trading tricks when a thread caught his eye. A user named Elder Echo posted a cryptic message: "What if the market had a secret day before it falls?" Imagine knowing the trigger, the hidden spark that sets the whole system on fire. He felt the weight of the world lift a fraction. Is there really a hidden spark, he wondered. The next morning Alex visited the local library, where he found an old economics journal tucked behind dusty shelves. An old article described a theory called the Recession Trigger Index, a model that calculated a hidden signal in economic data, revealing the exact day before the market corrected. The author claimed the model was never released because the data were too sensitive, but the formula was printed in a margin, almost as a secret note. Alex felt the thrill of discovery pulsing through his veins. Curiosity pulled him like a magnet. He stayed up all night copying the formula and putting it into a spreadsheet. He fed it data from the past 10 years, unemployment rates, interest rates, housing prices, consumer confidence. The spreadsheet blinked, and a line hovered on the screen. It pointed to a future day, March 15, the next month. Alex's heart pounded. He had found a way to see the invisible spark, a day before the world would tumble. Act 1 ends with Alex deciding to test the model despite the risk. He wonders, will this change his life? Will it be the key to escape poverty? Alex began his experiments the following week. He started small, buying a handful of shares of a company that the index flagged as likely to drop. He sold them just before the predicted drop, gaining a tidy profit. He did the same with a different stock that the model predicted would surge. Each time, the numbers on his screen danced in a bright green glow, a simple signal that his life was changing. He became a regular at the coffee shop where a quiet woman named Myra worked. She noticed his excitement and asked about his success. Alex showed her his spreadsheet. Myra, a former student of economics, smiled and said, "You're playing a dangerous game. The market is not a puzzle that you can solve with a single formula." Together, Alex and Myra refined the index. They added more variables, global trade data, central bank policies, and even the chatter of social media. Their predictions grew more accurate, each one verified by market movements. Alex's small apartment filled with fresh money, his rent was paid, and he even saved enough for a new phone. He began to feel the old weight lift. The world seemed a little less frightening, but the power came with a price. The model began to reveal not just market moves, but the underlying fragility of the entire system. It warned of a hidden debt bubble in the housing market, of banks that would collapse, and of people who would lose their homes. Alex watched the news horrified as headlines matched the index's predictions. He saw how a single day of panic could ripple through the lives of thousands. One night, while Mira was asleep, Alex's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number: "We know you're watching the index. Stop playing with the system, or we'll make sure you lose everything." The threat sent a shiver down his spine. Who was watching? And what did they want? Act 2 builds as Alex decides to share the index with Mira and a small group of friends, hoping to use the knowledge to help others. But they create a tiny cooperative, buying properties with the knowledge that the market would soon drop. They save money, pay off mortgages early, and even give small loans to neighbors. The cooperative becomes a beacon of hope, a community that thrives on a shared secret. Yet the model's predictions grew more ominous. It started to point to a global crisis, a wave of bankruptcies in the manufacturing sector, a collapse of the energy market. The people Alex and his friends helped began to panic. Suddenly, their newfound prosperity turned into fear. The community's trust was shaken. Alex questioned the ethics of using such power. Was he a savior or a manipulator? The tension swelled inside him like a storm waiting to burst. The turning point came when a shadowy group called the Consortium, a coalition of wealthy investors, contacted Alex. They offered him a deal. They would fund his research in exchange for exclusive access to the index. They promised him wealth beyond his imagination, but at a cost. They wanted to use the index to protect their fortunes and deepen their power over the world. Alex and Myra met in the dim light of Alex's apartment. The air was thick with worry. Myra said, "You have to think about everyone who depends on you. If we hand the model to them, it could destroy the market, break the economy, and hurt millions." Alex felt a pull between his desire to keep his newfound power safe and the lure of ultimate control. He could become a king of finance, but at the expense of society. He decided to stop the consortium and keep the index hidden. He destroyed his own copy, but the information lived in the minds of his friends. He called a meeting with the cooperative, explaining his choice. Some were shocked, others angry. One friend, Tess, suggested they leak the index to the public, hoping to level the playing field. Alex feared that widespread use could cause chaos, market crashes, panic, and social upheaval. The climax arrived on the day the index predicted a massive market collapse. Alex's heart hammered. He saw the numbers flash. The index pointed to an exact date. He had two choices: to act to stop the crash or to let it happen. He knew that if he used his knowledge to manipulate the market, he could save himself, but at the cost of millions of livelihoods. If he stayed silent, the collapse would unfold, but it might be necessary to reset the system to allow the economy to heal. He chose to use his knowledge to influence only small trades, spreading rumors of potential dips to cause a controlled sell-off that would soften the blow. He whispered to a handful of trusted traders. The market did fall, but not as hard as the index had predicted. The damage was less and the economy slowly recovered. People who had lost jobs and homes found new opportunities, and the community that Alex had built grew stronger. The market, though bruised, was not broken. After the crash, Alex vanished from the public eye. He returned to his small apartment, the same one where he had started. He looked out at the rain-slick streets and thought of the power he had held and the power he had chosen to abandon. He saw a city of people, each with their own dreams, now slightly safer, because someone had chosen not to play with a deadly game. He could not tell anyone about the index. He had no use for it anymore. All he had left was a simple truth: money is not the end, but a tool to help people. The story ends with a quiet reflection. Alex looks at the empty spreadsheet on his screen, the lines of code that once promised fortune now lying dormant. He smiles softly. He knows that the future will still bring uncertainties, but he has learned that the greatest wealth is not in knowing the exact day of the market's crash, but in caring for others and making small, honest choices. The Recession Trigger Index was never a gift, it was a test. Alex passed it. He left the world a little better, and the reader is left to wonder, would you keep such power for yourself, or would you choose to let the world find its own path?
Found this interesting? Subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like, share it out, and drop your questions or ideas in the comments. Until our next adventure.